Today I'm here with a seasonal knitting plans video. Apparently summer's creeped up on us. We wouldn't know by the weather here in Amsterdam. This seemed like a great moment to just kind of get my thoughts down, share with you what I've got on my list. This is probably going to be much shorter than my previous videos, but I have a few things specifically that I wanted to touch on that I felt would be worth recording and sharing with you guys. Welcome everyone. For those new here, I'm Sherry and this is Good Knits. You can also find me by that name on Instagram. I am a Canadian expat that's been living in Amsterdam for the last 7 years with my husband, and this is my channel here where I share all my love of knitting, everything that I've got on my needles, plan to have on my needles, and general thoughts. If you watch my spring video, in that one I actually didn't really have any super clear plans other than a few pieces about what I wanted to knit. I kind of grouped things into textured tops, t-shirts, lighter layers, cardigans, and kind of kept it open. I had some ideas about what I wanted to knit, and for the most part last season my Milady's dress ended up taking the vast majority of my knitting time, and therefore I didn't get to quite a lot of the plans that I have. So I did buy a lot of yarn because I did a trip to Lithuania back in May, and there I picked up quite a lot. So I figured for summer I really just wanted to focus on using the yarn that I have and trying to stick to working that yarn stash down and knitting what was already in my queue. I actually thought about not recording this video because I wasn't really sure that it was worth sharing so few pieces on my knitting plans. But when I sat down to look at my queue for the upcoming season, I realized that this is actually the first season where I don't have any of the really big designers on my list like PetiteKnit or My Favorite Things Knitwear. And that actually wasn't intentional. I did go into the year saying that I want to knit from newer designers, try new yarns, and really try to focus on expanding my experience across different designers. But this is the first season where I seem to really just organically have done that. And so while I'm not gonna lie, I still have a Cumulus tee on my needles for my spring knitting plans, and I'm just finishing that up. But in terms of my actual summer plans, I don't have any of those designers. And so I thought this could also be a good moment to maybe share potentially some new patterns with you, really highlight some options outside of the really big name pattern designers. I've also really enjoyed this year knitting from other designers because I think I was very used to the writing style of PetiteKnit and My Favorite Things Knitwear. There's a comfort level there of knowing exactly what I'm going to get when I'm knitting them. I understand how the techniques are explained. There's usually, especially with PetiteKnit, quite a lot of helpful videos to reference. And I think knitting from other designers has really expanded my skill set and made me feel more confident and comfortable as a knitter. Not so much in the moment of knitting those things, because I do run into challenges where I'm trying to decipher what that designer specifically means because it's a new style to me. So for example, I'm having that on other loops just with how she refers to rows or her increases. Also with one of the Knit Pearl Girl patterns that I'm making right now from SOFIE, I also am doing a little bit of mental gymnastics to try to figure out how things are meant to be done. But that's been good because I think it makes me stop and really focus, read the pattern carefully, seek out new information and techniques. So I would just encourage everybody to, if you haven't really branched out and knit from other designers, it can be a really enjoyable and challenging experience and opens you up to a wider range and maybe new techniques, new construction methods that you otherwise wouldn't have done. Also this season, I will have a lot of yarn that's new to me, which I'm really excited for. It's been nice this year trying to branch out from my typical knitting for Olive, which you will have noticed from my every summer top I've ever made. I clearly gravitate towards knitting for Olive, especially when it comes to summer knits. And I'm really trying to move away from that, try new brands, try new materials, because I think I'm probably missing out on a lot of really amazing yarn out there, and I'm doing my best to expand my experience and knowledge in that area as well. My summer plans actually include very little summer knits. I have realized living in Amsterdam, I don't have a lot of use for tank tops. Even this cami number 9 that I'm wearing from My Favorite Things Knitwear, I finished it earlier this year, and this is probably the 3rd or 4th time that I'm wearing it. For the most part, there's just not a ton of sun here, and I tend to wear a lot of my summer knits on warm weather vacations. This year, I don't actually have a lot of sunny vacations coming up, so I don't feel as much need to actually knit tank tops or summer pieces right now. I think I'm actually better to spend my time focusing on transitional items. So I think t-shirts, especially cardigans, things that kind of move between seasons, especially spring and fall, because those seasons tend to be longer here and I'll get a lot more use out of those items. Apologies if my angle keeps changing at all. I kept getting phone calls that I had to pick up and disconnect everything. So since I'm recording on my phone, sometimes that can be a bit annoying. If you're seeing things around me changing, just know that that's why. For today's video, I have 6 pieces that I'm gonna go through. And even there, I think it's probably a bit too ambitious for knitting in the next 3 months, just knowing the speed at which I typically knit and the fact that I still have a lot of spring knits on my needles, including my Brady Loop cardigan, my fancy Pepita skirt, my Cumulus tee. So I still need to wrap those up. I'm not in a huge rush for any of them. Yeah, 6 pieces for me is quite a lot. Chances are I won't get to them all. I want to start today with a project that I've actually already cast on, which is my Farnham Tee by the Knit Pearl Girl, also known as Sophie. I cast this on about a week ago, so right into summer knitting. This is a drop shoulder t-shirt style that's worked top down. It has a bit of an oversized fit and a striped pattern on it, which has a really clever, I would say at least for me, shoulder technique to make sure that you get these kind of points on the shoulders and it looks very clean where you transition from back to front. I am knitting this in Sadness Garn Line, which is well known to I think most knitters in the community, and this is the color olive green, which is 9062. And then I'm also using, I have only a use ball because I only have one. This is 1015, which I believe is also called Kit. And since I have it here, I'll just show you the progress that I've had. So this is how it's currently knitting up. Very, very happy with how it's going. And you can see the shoulder detail that I'm referring to there with these little cross points. This is actually my first pattern by Sophie. I've had her on my list for quite a while to knit from. I have many patterns of hers in my library, but this is the first that I'm actually trying. And definitely there's a lot of copy within the pattern. You really have to read it. I would say it's an adventurous pattern. It's definitely not easy by any means, but because there's so many written instructions and tutorial videos included that she's put together, it is something that you could give a try if you are, say, an adventurous beginner, for example. So it's knit up in DK weight yarn on 4.5mm needles. It's moving really quickly for me, so I think that will actually be my first official summer knit that's off my needles, probably within the next week or two, because it's pretty much all I've been working on for the last week. I'm just really enjoying seeing it progress. Also having the color changes within the stripes makes it very engaging. And I think I only have about 10 centimeters left on the body. So yeah, for a week of work, pretty good. The second top that I have is a tank top, so very much in the summer knit category, and that is the SABAI top by Suzanne Muller or Paula Strick. And I will say I'm becoming quite the super fan of Suzanne Muller patterns. I knit the Sonia tee in the spring and it's one of my most worn garments now. I also knit the Berlin scarf, which I still have to put the final finish fringe details on, but that's very nearly done. I knit that in the winter, and I have quite a lot of her patterns saved as knits for upcoming seasons. So I really like the way that she writes her patterns. I think her styles are really timeless, and everything I've made so far fits really well. This is one of her newer designs. It is a boat neck tank top, and it actually comes with two options. You can knit a rib trim detail at the top, or omit that and then just have a looser unfinished sort of look. I'm gonna go with option 2. I don't particularly love the rib trim. I just think the other way looks a bit more polished for what I would be looking for. I really struggled with deciding on the yarn for this one, so I ended up buying it about a week ago just on a whim, spur of the moment kind of thing. I was originally actually thinking of going with the Lamana Perla yarn that she recommended, but it says in the pattern it is a little bit thicker, and just thinking about if I really want to wear it in the summer, perhaps going with a lighter weight yarn would make more sense. So while the Lamana Perla is a DK weight, I think it just has a heavier, thicker texture from what I gather from the pattern. I also think the color palette there gears a bit more towards fall, which if I enjoy this pattern, I definitely see myself making more in that yarn. So I think if I like this, it fits well, I will just go ahead and buy more of that yarn. There's a really beautiful deep petrol kind of green color or burgundy, and I was really gravitating towards those. This is a top-down tank top, and it does say specifically in the pattern that it is beginner friendly. I also think it looks very much bra friendly, which is nice, so definitely a great option, probably something that will move quickly off your needles. I decided to go with one of the recommended yarns from the pattern. It does include 3 recommendations. Like I said, the Lamana Perla, which I considered, the Sadness Garn Line, and because I was knitting my Farnham Tee in that, I really wanted to branch out and try a yarn that was new to me. So I ended up going with the Svarta Foret Cecilia yarn, and this is in brick red. And funny, I didn't really look at the yarn composition of this compared to the Line, but this is exactly the same composition, which is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. So it is essentially exactly the same, just a different brand, different color palette. I do find with the linen yarns, none of the colors really speak to me. I was trying to find maybe a deeper purple or a really beautiful blue on this, but I think because of the way that the cotton and linen hold the yarn dye, all the colors tend to be, at least in my opinion, to be quite muted, which I was hoping to get a slightly deeper color on this one, but looking at all the available options for this specific yarn, this was kind of the best one, the one that jumped out at me. And I will say when I got this, it's much brighter than I was expecting. So not exactly the brick red that I was hoping for. I would call this a bit more orangey peach, but that's okay. I think it will still look nice. I believe this is the one that's shown in the pattern photos. It looks really good on her. So I'm gonna give it a try. Worst case, I don't like it, I knit a second one in a different color. So this is what I'm going to use for that, and I believe when my Farnham Tee is done, maybe not even then, I'm just going to go ahead and cast this on next because tank top weather is short here and I want every opportunity to be able to wear it. So since we're already into July, I need to do that fairly quickly. The third one on my list is moving away from garments, and it is a shawl, and that is the Italian Spring Shawlette by Francesca, also known here and on Instagram as an Italian knitter. And she has a whole series of free patterns which are in this garter stitch eyelet pattern. This is triangular and it's knit from tip to top, so the smallest portion out, on 3.5mm needles with a light fingering weight yarn. I said in my spring plans video that I really want to give shawls a chance. I've never really been a shawl knitter. I don't necessarily know if they fit within my actual style and what I tend to wear, but I do want to give them a chance, and I think this is a nice option. It doesn't seem daunting or complicated. It could basically be a mindless knit that I have on my needles that I work up over time. It is meant to be knit in more of a summer weight yarn, but I decided for me, I think it makes more sense to do it in a slightly warmer yarn. And so also yarn that I bought in Lithuania is the Concept by Katja silky lace yarn, and this is merino extra fine silk superwash yarn, which is 80% virgin wool and 20% silk. And I think it just has a really nice feel. I actually wasn't really looking to buy this yarn or get something for this pattern when I was in Lithuania, but when I saw and felt this, I also just really enjoy the color of it. I figured, why not give it a chance? I'd never seen it in store, I'd never touched it before, so yeah, this is color 186. I don't know if it has a specific name. I'm quite looking forward to trying it and seeing if this is maybe a yarn brand that I want to explore further. So I'm in no rush for this piece. I think it will just be when I'm done my Cumulus tee and I want a more mindless knit on my needles, I will go ahead and cast this on so that I just have something to do while I'm watching TV, because it seems like it'll be fairly simple. Then next we have the Ppoppo Jacket by Eggio Knits, and this is a piece that I am super excited for. I really need more cardigan jacket type pieces in my wardrobe. I definitely feel like I'm missing those, especially right now where we still have quite chilly weather and you don't want to necessarily throw a jacket on, you just want to put a slightly heavier layer on and head out. So I saw this last season and immediately fell in love with it. It is based on her sweater design, also called the Ppoppo Sweater, I believe. It's worked up in a double moss stitch from top down. It's meant to be very oversized, so I believe in the pattern photos there's about 30 centimeters of positive ease. I think based on some gauge issues that I've had already from swatching it, I probably won't end up with quite as much positive ease on the size 1 I plan to make, but that's okay. I don't tend to love really, really big oversize on me, so I think it'll be fine if it works up a tiny bit smaller. This is one where I really struggled with what yarn color to use. I do love the blue in the pattern photos. I also saw Danish Musings make hers in more of a sagey green light color, maybe a bit similar to this. And I really like that. But when I was in Lithuania, I came across this Lanagato VIP yarn in this beautiful rosy red, or what would it be called? I guess this is more of like that brick red kind of color that I was hoping the linen would be. And it's color 13737. This is a completely new to me yarn. It wasn't on my radar at all. It's 80% merino extra fine and 20% cashmere. And I felt this, fell in love with it, really, really love this color. I think, you know, it's a bit more muted than the Monday sweater I have and a bit more red than the Cumulus tee in the plum rose. And I just really gravitated to it. Where I'm unsure, so I think that color will be great, but then I got this Gepard yarn Kidsetta. Now, I've never worked with this mohair before. I am also excited to use it. However, it's just, I think, a bit too orange. I will insert a picture of the swatch because I've since undone it just so that I have the yarn to work with. They don't perfectly go together, and so I am questioning for myself if I should try to match a little bit closer to this, because this does throw it off a little bit. It just gives it this orangey fire flavor that I'm not really loving, and I know people commented on my Instagram for my swatch saying they really liked it. But I just want to consider if I'm going to wear, or if I'm going to make this jacket, I want it to be in a color that I really feel like I'll reach for and it will go with more in my wardrobe. I think introducing that really orange tone just doesn't quite work with this really beautiful pinky red. So I do think I'm probably going to reconsider the mohair to pair with. Maybe I will see what else Gepard has. If not, I would like to find another brand that has a new to me mohair, but I could see myself ending up with knitting for olive mohair on this simply because the color palette is so vast that you're much more likely to find a mohair to go with the other yarn you're pairing it with. So that's the plan for the Ppoppo jacket. Really excited for this. I think it will be a bit more complicated with the double moss stitch pattern and maintaining that throughout. This is a piece I really want, well, even right now in my wardrobe, but definitely for fall. So excited to get this cast on. Then we have the Marigold t-shirt, coming back to t-shirts, and this is by Winter's Weather Knits, which I have never knit a pattern from before, but I've had quite a few saved on my list. And this is a pattern that I saved a couple years ago and keep coming back to, as I find it very visually interesting. It also looks like it has quite an interesting construction method. The Ravelry page includes very few details, but when I look closely at the pictures, it seems like it's knit side to side, which I've never done before. So I really want to give this a try. I think though, looking at the pattern photos, a lot of the enjoyment of the final piece for this will come down to the specific color choices that you make. So I think what I want to do is, I bought this linen yarn from Style Sous Liz in Lithuania, a bit on a whim with no plans for it, but this linen is specifically produced in Lithuania and I wanted to buy something a bit more local. And also I just really love this purple, beautiful color here. It's 100% linen, made in Lithuania, and I have, how many grams of this? I have 300 grams, so I have quite a lot to use, definitely more than a t-shirt's worth. But if I'm going to use this, and I think I would need to hold it double, if I'm going to use this for the Marigold Tee, I will need a contrast color. I'm thinking I would like to use another purple, so rather than doing a full contrast with a lighter creamy color and the purple, I'm thinking what I want to do is try to find a color that's similar to this, or perhaps a slightly darker or slightly lighter purple, so that that color change is really discreet. If you have an idea for a yarn that would work for this, can you please leave a comment? I need to find a fingering weight purple yarn, probably in 100% cotton or 100% silk, or maybe some blend of those two. And Knitting for Olive has a very, very limited pure silk range. I can't really find a color that I'm gravitating towards there. And I also would like to move away from using Knitting for Olive if I can. And I can't really think of 100% cotton that I would use. So if you have some suggestions that have the color range that I'm looking for within purples, please let me know, because I would like to find something so I can cast this on soon, simply so that I can actually get some wear out of it. I have heard that working with 100% linen can also be really tough on the hands, so I'm curious if I will enjoy the experience of this. I've never done it before. I will probably try swatching just with the linen on its own and see how it feels, but I don't think this is going to per se be a very enjoyable experience, but hopefully it will produce a beautiful piece. So yes, that is the Marigold Tee. And the final piece is actually one that I don't have yarn for. It's the only one that I don't, and that is the SOFIE Sweater by Suzanne Muller or Paula Strict. So like I said, I'm having a bit of a moment with her. I'm really enjoying her patterns, and this one has been on my list for a while. It also showed up in my spring knitting plans. I think this will be a great piece to throw on. It's not quite a cardigan, it's not quite a sweater. I used to wear a lot of wrap sweaters. I really like them, and I think this has a bit of a cropped fit to go nicely with high-waisted pants and skirts. So it is top down. You, I think, work around the front, and then when you get to the bottom, you kind of join so that the sweater is attached. I'm not 100% sure what color I want to knit this in. I know for sure I don't want a gray, I don't want black, I don't think I want cream, but I would like it to be a bit more in the neutral family. If you guys have some suggestions, let me know. The yarn called for in this is Lamana Como and Lamana Premia, so it's a fingering weight and a light fingering or lace held together for DK weight. I do think I want to make it in a fingering and mohair held together like the pattern calls for. Potentially I will just go with the yarn here that's recommended. I've never worked with the Lamana yarns before. I haven't looked at the color palette though, so I'm not sure how wide of a range it is and if I can find something that I like. But I am thinking that maybe I'll stick to that yarn. So if you have some suggestions for color palette, let me know. I am really undecided on this one, but I do know I definitely want this piece. And so I do need to make a decision fairly soon on which yarn I will purchase. So like I said, short and sweet video, 6 items on the list, still too ambitious, but always nice to sit down and share these seasonal knitting plans with you guys. I also really love seeing what everybody else is knitting on for the season, and also noticing a bit of a trend that I think a lot of us are starting to knit a bit more in preparation for fall versus knitting specifically for summer, because the season almost everywhere tends to be too short. Thanks for joining today. Please don't forget to like this video. It helps my channel grow. And as always, please subscribe, turn on notifications. I try to post podcast episodes every 2 to 3 weeks and intersperse additional content here and there. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing my progress in my podcast episodes.